Have you ever found yourself feeling stuck when business isn't moving forward? What key steps might you be overlooking that could be preventing you from driving your business?
What if we told you that the key to breaking through those barriers and building stronger relationships with your customers might be as simple as a thoughtful follow up? Tune in to the final episode of our three-part series today on what it takes to become a successful salesperson. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone out there. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Secrets in Medical Device Sales. We are so happy you guys keep tuning into us.
Hey, everybody. We are very excited to be back here again this weekend, which we hope you all had a good weekend. As you know, we are the Sunday girls. And Lisa, did you have a good weekend? I haven't even had a chance to ask you.
Yes, I did. I had some family come into town. I got to see my niece and nephew.
Oh, fun.
Busy football weekend, even though we didn't win. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about that. My team too. Anyway, well, good. I'm glad. It's always fun to see
How was your
family.
weekend? How was your
So
weekend?
we ventured out and went to an oyster festival, something different.
Oh, that's
It
awesome.
was really fun. Had some great oysters and then had crab, what was it? A crab soup and some music. And it was just really fun being outside. And then
how nice.
it was good. Just something different, but I enjoyed it.
That's
And
so
now,
nice.
I know. And now we are back to all the fun discussing with you guys on our third episode of our three-part series on really what it takes to become successful. So if you all remember, we had that discussion with Patricia Choquette, who is absolutely the epitome of a stellar rep. And why? Because of the actions that she does. And this is the last episode where we have taken three of the most important actions that she believes it takes to be a successful rep. The number one was being the hardest working person in the room. Number two is to always bring value. And today we are discussing the third portion, which is follow-up. If you remember, she said that in the episode.
Yep,
so
she did.
It's going to be fun. We're just kind of digging into what this means in all different aspects.
Yeah. So everybody, I'm sure listening knows what follow-up is, but we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about what it looks like, why is it important, and give you guys some great examples, because sometimes you think that you're doing good follow-up and maybe you are, and then sometimes you forget to do it altogether. And what are the consequences of that, right? So honestly, Cindy, if I'm going to be the good follow-up rep, on our last episode, you talked about the fact that you only buy Advil or Motrin.
And that's right.
And you refuse to buy generic ibuprofen.
I'm telling you.
Which is hilarious.
Nobody's changed my mind.
But if I was the good follow-up rep and I was in the pharmacy, right? And you were in there going to buy your Advil or Motrin and I saw you, a good follow-up example would be, oh, Cindy, hey, great to see you again. Hope you had a great weekend. I see that you're picking up another bottle of Advil. If you remember, we had this conversation and you told me what was important to you. And you told me that you did not think that the generic ibuprofen drug was as effective as Advil or Motrin in your mind for whatever reason. And so I did a little bit of digging for you and I pulled up some data on one of our most recent studies where we went head to head with Advil and Motrin. And you can see here that it is just as effective in the exact same amount of time as Advil and Motrin. I'm going to give it to you. And I hope that maybe you can use this to make an informed decision. You know, I don't want to push you to do something you don't want to do, but I truly believe in our product. And I believe that our product is just as effective as Advil or Motrin. So happy hunting. Good shopping.
Okay. That was so classic because I even forgot we talked about that. So how you're right. Like you just forget. So I'm so glad you said that because you're exactly right. It takes a conversation and then a continued conversation to continue knowing that, look, I don't even want to consider generic. Well, now Lisa just gave me some food for thought. So maybe I'll read what she has. And then one more further follow-up Lisa could do is come back, ask me if I've read the information. Then it becomes a fun part. Ask me to try it. And then ask me to try to say, does it relieve pain? Do you not feel better? And like have a way for me to give her a definitive answer. And you know, honestly, that's how people make decisions for change. That's what happens. But if she never followed up, I'd be going to that pharmacy buying Advil Motrin for the next couple of years.
And it's not that it's super easy. I mean, sometimes I think you have to put yourself out a little bit when you're doing this follow up, and it can be uncomfortable. I mean, it was easy for me to do because obviously we're just using this as an example. But when you're following up with a physician or a customer that is, you've had just a brief moment in time with them, and they told you maybe one thing that was important to them, and now you hopefully have done your homework and you figured out an answer to whatever they were asking you or told you what was important. Now you need to go back to them and you need to put yourself in a little bit of an uncomfortable position and put yourself out there and say, Dr. Smith, you and I had a great conversation last week. I wanted to follow back up with you on what you told me that was really important to you. Here is some clinical data on our product. You know, it really exemplifies why our product does what it does. It's as effective, or whatever it is that you're trying to show the physician what he was saying was important to them. But sometimes you got to put yourself out there a little bit. And I think that can be maybe a little bit hard sometimes for people to do when they're trying to do a good quality follow-up. Is you got to put yourself out there just a tad.
And I agree. So I think to make this simple, because this really is a very, very important topic. And if we break this down just to really dive deeper into following up, we're first going to talk about why we should follow up. I mean, because again, we've started to, but we'll really talk to you. You'll walk away with knowing why you should follow up, what prevents people from doing this, and then how you can follow up and follow up effectively. So beginning with why. And you just kind of touched on it, but I think I'm going to summarize it in a word. One of the most important reasons that you should follow up is number one, to help build relationships. Because, you know, sales is relationships. It's the largest portion of what we do. And this regular follow-up gives that little bit of establishing trust and rapport, whether it's with a current customer or a future customer. And again, Lisa just talked about that simple example. She's a familiar face. She saw me again. She called me by my name. And now I'm starting to trust her. Now I know her as the generic ibuprofen representative, but I'm more likely to speak to her again because we've started to build a relationship. So I think number one, why is building relationships.
Yeah, 100%. And you're right. I feel like every medical device that's out there, to some degree, you need to build a relationship with your customer in order for them to use that product. So you're right, Cindy, that's number one, and it's huge. Another one, I think, is just the fact of you're, in a way, if you're not directly saying it, you're asking for some business. So you're going to increase a conversion rate. You're going to increase the chances of getting that business by me asking you and telling you about what you told me was important to you in terms of data. I then presented you with that data and asked you to make an informed decision based on that data. That in and of itself is asking for the business in a roundabout way, and it's increasing your conversion rate. Let's hope that might be all your customer needs. Just that little bit of follow-up that you gave them, it might be the switch to just tell them, hey, you know what? She did her job. She did what I asked her to do, and here she is asking for the business now. I'm going to give her that next case.
I love it. I love it because we all want everybody to have much higher conversion rates. I think something else that it does, so this would be number 3, is addressing concerns. What a great opportunity for her to come back. I'm just going to use the example again. We're going to talk about data. What are my concerns? Is data my concern? Do I have the same amount of pain relief? What is that? But this really gives you that opportunity to never assume and make sure you're all on the same page and alleviate any doubts you may have.
Yeah. And along with that, I think is also, I feel like this is kind of throughout the whole story and the whole narrative is persistence. When you're following up, you are showing your customer that you are persistent and they're important to you. And so you by default are going to work for them and give them what they're asking. And it shows them that you're dedicated to them by showing them that. If you tell them you're going to do something and then you just don't do it, well, you're kind of telling your customer they weren't that important.
You're right. Persistence is just kind of an underlying characteristic of a very good salesperson. Number 5, why follow-up is important, is now you get to collect feedback. And what that actually does for you is tell you if you're on the right path, because everything that we're doing is just laying down the breadcrumbs. I mean, you could start in one direction and now maybe there's something different. Maybe there's something you've missed. Maybe there's something even more important. But all that does is allow you to tweak your approach. And again, sales is about customer needs, right? So collecting feedback on what is in it for them, what works for them, and what they need is great opportunity to do so.
100%. And, you know, I think the last thing, number 6, is really, you can't expect a customer to say yes right away. But what are you doing with that follow-up? You are nurturing that lead. You're nurturing that customer. You're showing them the persistence. You're giving them the information. You did what they asked you to do. Even if they're not ready today to say, okay, Lisa, I'm going to try the generic instead of the Advil. I at least brought to you what you requested. I showed you that I cared. I wanted to build the relationship with you. You're beginning to trust me. All of these things lead to this nurturing of a relationship that at some point you're going to give me an answer. And I hope the answer is going to be yes.
It's such a vital part. And I mean, I know this sounds kind of simple, but I'm just going to summarize why both Lisa and I really believe follow-up is important. We named 6 things. Number 1 is building relationship. Number 2 is increasing your conversion rates. Number 3 would be addressing concerns. 4 is persistence. 5 is allowing to collect feedback. And number 6 is advancing or nurturing leads. So all of that is why it's so important. So sounds simple, right?
Yeah.
Well, what do you think prevents people from doing what we just explained might be simple?
Well, I think the biggest reason, honestly, is something that you and I talk about a lot in our episodes. I think we did an episode just on this subject, but it's fear. You don't want to do it because you're scared of the no. You're already assuming that customer is going to say no. And I swear, Cindy, I think a lot of times when we operate out of fear, man, we just really underestimate what we're able to do. You know, we assume answers. We think things are going to go bad. We think they're going to say no. We're scared to do it. We're uncomfortable in our own skin of doing it. Maybe we feel like the doctor doesn't like us. I mean, I don't know, but it all boils down. It all boils down to fear. And we always say this, but fear is false evidence appearing real. So don't believe the hype. You know, don't play into your fear. Just suck it up and do what you're supposed to do, because I really believe that your customers want you to do that. You know, they give you those breadcrumbs. They put that out there so that you will take that information and run with it. And they're going to see how far you're going to take it.
Oh, absolutely. I think that is so important that I'm going to ask all of you right now. There is somewhere you're driving today. There's something you need to be done this week or the end of next week. What is something big that A, you forgot to follow up on, or you need to? And ask yourself, why? Is it fear? Because right now, it might be. Now, if it's not fear, I really think there's only one other really strong, I mean, there's probably many reasons, but I feel like one other common reason, and don't laugh when I say this, everybody, it's lack of motivation. So this is where you got to dig deep. Why are you not motivated? Are you know, there's something underlying that. It might be something as maybe this is a new product you don't believe in. Now that wouldn't be good. So do some homework. Recognize what you're representing. Maybe you had a previous conversation with this customer that you need to speak to that didn't go well. So you don't really feel like dealing with it again. Well, guess what? You need to go back to that conversation, figure out what's wrong, and move forward. Maybe it's that you're tired, and maybe it's that you're like, oh, this is just one of these weeks. I just don't feel like doing anything. Guess what? That's never going to get you anywhere. You're going to have a customer that's going to continue to forever use Advil and Motrin if you don't find motivation to get them to change.
Oh my gosh.
They're out there.
That's such a good point, actually. You're so right. I mean, sometimes you say this and it's so important, is like, what's your why? So if you're having that lack of motivation, then remind yourself, okay, well, what's my why? Because if I don't follow up, then where am I going to go? Well, it's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse. Your customer's probably going to think that you're ignoring them. And even if it's an uncomfortable situation, it's better to just face it head on than try to continually ignore it and think it's going to go away, because it doesn't. It never goes away. It just stays there. It's like the stagnant little thing hanging out, waiting for you to acknowledge it. I mean, and it could even be as simple as like, shoot, I forgot to email that doctor this week. Well, now when I email her, she's going to be like, oh my gosh, Lisa, you're such a slacker. Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe they got busy too. Maybe they didn't remember that you were supposed to follow up with them. And then when you do, it's like perfect timing. And they're like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about you. So you're right. That lack of motivation, man, kick yourself in the butt on that one. Just go and do it. We realize you're putting yourself out there, and maybe that's one of the reasons, but I don't know, you're in sales. It's kind of your job to do that, to put yourself out there and like go after it. So yeah.
It's so true. And motivation, be careful. You can justify anything. And remember, if you go back to an episode that we did probably a month ago, it's all about making excuses. All of this is kind of a domino effect. So if you're lack of motivation, don't make excuses. Go back and listen to that episode, and that may make you see where you are. So I think overall, I don't really talk too much about why we don't follow up, but I think it's important for the discussion so you kind of understand where we're coming from. And hands down, fear of rejection is by far why I believe most people don't, and Lisa as well. And then lack of motivation.
Yeah.
So now for the fun part. Remember, what is this episode? What is our title of our podcast? Secrets in Medical Device. It is now time to reveal the secret. Yay! I think we've got them going on long enough.
Yeah, and I love this secret, and I think that you should reveal it because I love when you reveal the secrets. But this one is so awesome, you guys, because when she said it, I was like, dang, ding, ding, ding. This is so perfect for follow-up.
Okay, everybody. So what is the secret to follow-up? The answer is personalization. Yes, personalization. So we're going to expand. You know, we always explain. But how you make follow-up amazing and the secret to making it work and making you progress in that sales process to do exactly what Patricia Choquette was talking about, that's personalizing the follow-up. So now this is where it all gets fun. There's no generic in this. What is something we say in a lot of our episodes is about authentication, right? Mm-hmm. You want to authentically be you. It builds trust. It helps them know who you are. So now we're just going to give you some examples and help you personalize your follow-up to make it impactful for your sales.
Well, and one of the things that I think you just said, and it's so worth repeating, is personalization. What is that? It's about making it personal, making it about that person, their needs. Let's be honest. Everybody to some degree loves to hear their own name being said. They love being talked about. They love talking about themselves. So you as a sales rep should be making your customers first in your life. You know, when Cindy came to me as the generic X rep and she says, this is important to me. I use this brand because this is what's important to me. As a sales rep, it should go ding, ding, ding. Okay, this is important to Cindy. When I follow back up with her, I need to personalize it and say, when you told me that this specific thing is important to you, this is what I did for you. And here's the information as it relates to you and your needs. 100%, you guys, that's going to pull that customer back in and go, wow, dang. Not only were they listening, they made it about me.
And on the flip side, she could have come back in. Now, remember, maybe 2 or 3 weeks went by and I haven't seen her. If she just exactly the way she said that made me think back to our conversation. If she just would have said, I have some data for you, what would that be about? I have no idea what she's talking about. But, well, I came here to follow up. I have some data. I'm going to leave this for you. Well, that didn't do anything for me. She handed me something. I forgot our conversation. But Lisa is spot on what she said. In that situation, she personalized her follow-up. She came back. She said my name. She reiterated the conversation we had with the details. And all of it came back. And then it was almost like I was in that same conversation. And now I know what's next.
Yes.
And, you know, personalizing that is so, so important.
Well, yeah. Again, it's about them. You're tailoring it to them and their needs and their journey, and you keep it on the same wavelength as what they need. And I talked about this a second ago, but like sometimes, like maybe it's perfect timing, right? Maybe you only had $20 in your pocket, Cindy, and the Advil was $21.99, but the generic is $18.99. And I, in a timely manner, brought you the follow-up that you were asking for and the data you were asking for, and I presented it in a way that it should have been presented. And you look at me and say, you know what? I actually have only $20 in my pocket. I thought I had 22. I can't afford to buy the Advil today, but I can afford to buy the generic. I'm going to give you a shot.
That's awesome. That word you just used, timely matter, is so important in personalizing. You know, you remember the information that you brought in because that's very relevant content. And then the timing keeps it at the forefront. You know, you don't want so much time to go by that it doesn't even matter anymore and things change. Now, timing is kind of, you know, that's also an individual decision based on what your conversation is. Maybe for certain customers, you can only see them every Tuesday. Maybe for certain customers, they need something in 24 hours. Maybe they need it in 30 minutes. So I think that when you are talking about a conversation and this requires follow-up, this is something you need to almost kind of triage in your head or prioritize. that when it comes to medicine, is this something they need right away? Is this something I can give them in a week? Because that timing makes it even more relevant. So
That's a
I
great
think that's
point.
really important.
Yeah, that's a great point. That brings to mind, like, I can't tell you how many times, especially early on in my career, when I was in the OR working with surgeons and I would get asked a question and I didn't have the answer, or I wasn't 100% sure about the answer. So, you never say something if you're not 100% sure. And my answer was always, I don't know, but I will find out and get back to you as soon as possible. And I always did, Cindy. It was always like the first thing. I mean, immediately I would take a note in my BlackBerry, or what was it called? I can't remember. It was like something that we would use a little pen for, and you'd write on that. And then, of course, then you got the phones and the iPhone 4 came out, or whatever the first one. I don't even know. But anyhow, long story short, I'd put a note in my phone or whatever, and I would make sure that I called that person that I knew would know the answer, and I'd get that answer for them. And sometimes, Cindy, I literally would like hunt that doctor down, like not hunt him and like stalk him, but you know what I mean? And give them the answer that they asked for. And they'd be like, oh, wow, that was quick, Lisa. I was like, I told you I was going to get you the answer. Like, that's a timing thing. That's a great point, Cindy. And I think when you show that to them, their personal need was that important that you made it your priority to get back to them. So 100% on that timing thing.
And they'll value that. And then, yes, there was a stylet with a BlackBerry, but now we have iPhone notes.
Yeah.
You pull it up in your notes and you have it right there. And then you're able to follow up. All right, let's take a minute and be real here. Okay, if you're driving and you're like, I get this, this makes sense. And we talked about fear, right? What if you're like, okay, I need to do this, but I'm kind of stuck. Now I kind of dropped the ball. I went too long. So you know what? Why don't you personalize it personally? What do I mean by that? Okay, well, did you just have a holiday? Like, for instance, it was Halloween. You can follow up with, like, if you know maybe your customer loves Halloween, always takes her kids trick or treating, come back in, let them say, hey, I just want to know, how did everything go with your kids? Because I remember last year you absolutely loved Halloween. That just might give you a way back in if you really are stuck. Again, it's personalizing if that was something that you had done in the past. Other thing I was thinking about is when you're also stuck and you need to follow up and you're like, oh, shoot, now what do I do? Well, if any of you out there sell more than one product, this is a great opportunity to go leverage one of your other products and notify a customer that you're going to be in the hospital, and then you can follow up with them there, because that gives you a reason that it doesn't seem so much time passed by and like all of a sudden, boom, oh, there you are. Oh, our conversation was a long time ago. So sometimes I think that just personalizing it, always make your customer feel comfortable. Always make them feel welcome and comfortable, because when you build these great relationships, it's always great to see your customers. And I think that personalizing with something, saying this again, but like a personal story always just helps. Maybe somebody just got married. Maybe there's a life event. It's awesome.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. You're right. Because you're bringing it back home. You're making it real. It's not like you're getting all weird and stalkerish, And what is, as you were talking, actually reminded me of another thing that I think is important is, in a lot of cases, our doctors, they have colleagues, right? They have peers. And so maybe within your follow-up, you can say, did you know, Dr. Smith, that Dr. Jones also tried the product the other day and he had a great case outcome? Maybe even say, give him a call, give him a shout. I know you guys are partners. It was a great case. We had a great outcome. I know you were worried about this concern. We had no issues during our case. Maybe Dr. Jones can talk to you about his experience with the product. So I think sometimes sharing success stories of peers or colleagues also is a good way to follow up in a situation where you may be worried that either you don't have all the answers, you didn't do it in a timely fashion, or you're just scared they're going to say no.
Back to fear. Lisa, it's false evidence appearing real. Isn't that so true? I just think this is really fun. And when you do personalize, and again, I'll just reiterate, how do we personalize? You personalize by sharing relevant content, making it specifically tailored to what they need and what they want in their whole journey of the sale. Make sure you do it in a timely manner and always remain authentically you. And I think that's really important. I also want to just point out something that we said all this, then there's always the flip side, right? Of when too much is too much. So we just described what we believe is important, and that's personalizing, moving a sale forward. Things you really kind of want to avoid is being very generic, and just repeating and being bothersome. And I will say, there's difficult times when you're trying to sell something. Maybe it's one of the products that it isn't as important, and maybe the customer has a hold up at one point. Maybe it's the cost, maybe the hospital has a stopping point. It's always good to communicate and ask them, okay, this is where we are. I understand the situation as of now. When would you like me to reach out again? And you can kind of establish maybe a structure and say, if you know that the committee doesn't meet for 4 months, well, if it's okay with you, I will wait 3.5 months to reach out. I don't want to bother you or inundate your inbox if we have a long time period. So I think that's just a little bonus extra on how not to go overboard. And again, just bring it back to being real, bring it back to being personal. And that's where you find the most success.
Perfectly said. So I hope everybody really enjoyed our 3-part series in the secret to success. And it was really based around the 3 topics or the 3 secrets that Patricia Choquette talked about in her episode. So if you haven't listened to it, you need to listen to it. Go back and listen to our other 2 episodes, how and why to be the hardest working person in the room is so important, and why always bringing value and what does that look like is so important as well to success. And then the third was what we just talked about, which is follow-up and personalizing that follow-up. Man, it is key to success. And I really believe, you guys, that these are such great, easy, super easy things to do in your everyday sales cycle that will really make you stand out, really make you just that top-notch sales professional, and your customers have no choice but to call on you.
Exactly. And if you haven't realized, they're all linked together. That when you follow up, and then they see you as the hardest working person in the room because you bring value. And now you're following up again. And now you're seen again as the hardest working person in the room. You will watch your numbers grow in sales. You will feel and enjoy the rewards of building more relationships with your customers. You will open new doors to sales. And that, when you combine all of these together, you will become one of the most successful salespeople. Thanks for listening in to an episode of Secrets in Medical Device Sales.